All right. Looks to me like we are recording. So my name is Sarah Seamount, and this is our mini training for February on navigating MSIS, the Migrant Student Information System in Idaho, and using reports for data accuracy. So we're going to start with navigation, which most of you here, I believe, have been doing this for quite a while. These are very familiar topics, but it occurred to me that having this on the website for new people to really be able to refer back to as they're learning the system might be very helpful. So we'll go through the navigation slides fairly quickly. If any of these are ones that you want me to return to during the question and answer session after the recording, I'm happy to do that. So when you first get into MSIS, you're going to see a navigation panel on the left. So in this example, I have Twin Falls is the district that I logged in as, and I can see that I have a district migrant summary. This will provide a list of migratory students in my district if I were from Twin Falls. District reports, which there are many fantastic reports that you can use for lots of purposes. Today, we'll talk about those that can really help you with data accuracy. Then we have our current year data collection. This is where you report re-interviews and your MPO completion. Remember, these are for your measurable program outcomes. And then finally, pending COEs. This is the location for COEs that you have imported but not yet submitted, or that have been rejected and are waiting for you to export, correct, and resubmit. So to use the district migrant summary, there is so much information there. I've actually learned some new things myself by putting together this presentation. So if you look at the top of the slide, you'll see what it looks like when you first go into your district migrant summary. And you'll notice that it says export to Excel in the top left-hand corner. You can export your entire list to Excel, and that can be very useful. So the way that you get to this is you click on the district migrant summary on the navigation panel on the left. You find a student by entering the student's name, EDU ID, or COE number in the search bar, and then the student will appear and can be selected by using one of two blue hyperlinks. One is for the student's name, and one is for the student's COE number. If you click the student's name, you will see the student and all of the tabs that we're about to talk about. If you click on the COE number, you will see the COE for that student. So what you see will depend on which hyperlink you select. So if you select the student, here's what you will see. You will see a number of tabs. We are going to go through each of them fairly quickly, but we have family or child data, movement history, enrollment, course history, assessments, immunizations, and current year data. When you look at the family/child data, this is what you'll see. And I did have to do an awful lot of scribbling over people's names so that we're not displaying any student data. But this is what you'll see. And so if you're looking for information on the student, general information, contact information for the family, or student's name, date of birth, where they were born, all kinds of information, and their M6 ID and their EDU ID. Those are things that can be very helpful that you will find, plus the parents' names. So this is a lot of general information on the student. This is also, if you look, I'll go back one, you'll see that there is a spot right here with a blue hyperlink that says edit. And so if you click on that, you will see this screen pop up, and this is an edit screen for the child, but only very limited changes can be made here. So I just want you to note there is at the top, it says note, student EDU ID, name, birth dates, and gender must be edited in the EDU ID system by Otis ticket and can not be changed here. You can request that a certificate of eligibility be unsubmitted for corrections. That's another way that those things such as student name and EDU ID can be corrected. So there are ways to do it, but you cannot do it here. And then there's also a spot here for the medical alert. I thought this was where you entered it, but it actually is better to enter it on the immunization tab, which you'll see later. I think we're going to get rid of it here. It's kind of a duplication. So this is how you do some editing. So now we're looking at the movement history. Movement history is what I think of as the COE itself, but it's more than that. So the movement history is going to show you where the student's COE is located, and that's where it starts. And then you can actually view the movement detail, and that's going to allow you to see you can correct the address there. You can print a copy of the COE. You can see, and you can also view the electronic COE. You can see all the information on that COE. So for this student that I was looking at, this is the most recent COE the student has is always going to be listed on top, and it happened to be Minidoka County Joint District 331 that did the COE. So if you click on the movement detail to view it, you will see, actually, let me go back one. Click on View Movement Detail, hyperlink to view this movement. And now what you're going to see is, and I didn't copy the whole thing because there was just so much information that I would have had to white out, but you'll see who approved the COE. You'll see what date it was approved. You'll see parent guardian information, address information, and you'll also see a button that says that you can edit the address. This can be done at any time, even after the COE is approved. So within this movement detail, you can edit the address. I'll show you how to do that in just a second. You can also print a copy of the COE in English or Spanish, and you can view the electronic COE, where within that, it's just like it would look like on your COE builder, where you can actually break it down and see what the activity was. You can see the date that the worker moved. You can see all of the information that's part of the electronic COE. So there's so much information that you can get from this. So if you choose to edit the COE address, you'll see this. You'll see parent guardian 1 and 2 and address. You can change the address, the city, the zip code, and the phone number. You cannot change the parents' names because that's important in that that's already been approved and is oftentimes tied to the worker. And also don't forget to save your changes. Under the enrollment tab, you're going to see school enrollment information for Idaho schools, and this will be including prior to, during, and after the student is eligible for the MEP. We gather that data on that student even from prior to when they were identified. It's all in our state system, and so for anything that we have related to that student for assessments or enrollment will be included in MSIS once the student is identified as a migratory student. It includes enrollment dates, grade levels, and EL status. So there's a lot of good information on that screen. State assessments, for each year that the student has state assessments, you will see the school year, and then you'll see a button that says Show Hide. And the advantage to Show Hide is that it will allow you to accordion out that year. You'll see every state assessment the student has had. You'll notice that there are not a lot of state assessments especially for older kids for 1920 because of the pandemic. So for a lot of students, you'll see it jump from 1819 to 2021. And that's just because 1920, we did not do ISATs in the spring. For younger children, I believe there would be IRI. And for English learners, there would be access, but for students that would only have ISAT, there won't be any test scores for 2019, 2020. And you can open and close each year so that you can see all of the assessments. Now this is immunizations, and in the immunizations tab, you will see the word edit in the top. This view that I'm showing you I already clicked on the word edit. So this is what you see when you're editing the student's immunizations. You would put in the dates for each of the immunizations that the child has had. So those will be, and these are all of the required immunizations. And so you just put those dates in. Please do update it because there are immunizations that older students will have. And this is also where I would recommend entering the medical alert, because this is also where you can list the medical condition severity. So if there's a medical alert, and let's say it is the student has a severe peanut allergy, then you would say this is acute. So it has severe symptoms or sudden onset, but brief duration. If the student frequently has ear infections or sinus infections, or hearing loss, you can list that, and then you can list it as chronic, because that's something that it's lasting for a long period of time or is marked by frequent reoccurrence. So that's how you do the medical alerts. So current year data, we're not going to spend a lot of time on because we have already covered this extensively in our last mini training, how to do all of the residency verification date, summer school begin and end dates, and all services during the regular and summer terms. So I put a link on the screen to our website and circled the most recent training that we did. That's the one that I would refer to in order to go really diving deep into current year data. All right, so we've finished the section on the navigation of looking at a individual student. Now we're going to look at something that's closely related, which has to do with using reports to make sure that all of our data in MSIS for each student is actually correct. And like I said earlier, if you have questions, please feel free to put those in the chat. I won't be answering them until the end of the recorded part of the session, but feel free to write them there so you don't forget. At the end, we'll be able to unmute and ask and answer questions. So for MSIS reports, I went through all of the reports that we have, and this training is really only looking at the reports that affect data accuracy. I do think we will want to have a second mini training that really dives into the usefulness of all reports. And as John O'Brien, our developer for the app, has so often says, you have so many reports. And we do, but I think they're very useful reports. So the ones that we'll look at today are District Migrant Summary. Believe it or not, this isn't just a way to look up students, it's actually a report. We'll look at summer school and student services very briefly. Bad residency verification dates, what I call the bad dates report, district enrollment movement discrepancy report, and the migrant counts for funding district detail. So there are a lot of reports that can help us to have more accurate data. And I hope that looking at these 5 will help us to understand how we can really examine our data closely to make sure that it's accurate. I apologize that this is so very, very small. When you got the PowerPoint this morning in an email, so hopefully if you would like to look at it in a bigger screen, you can, and you can definitely look at it later or pull up your own reports. That would be even better. So this report has the potential to increase our numbers and is an easy form of IDNR. It is as helpful a report as we have. So once you've run the report and you then would click on, it's in Excel, you would click on data and then on filter. Once you've filtered it, you're going to select the down arrow next to enrollment status. So if you look over here, this is where I've clicked on the down arrow right next to enrollment status, and you're going to unselect everything except left district. What that will leave you with is the students who have left your district. You have marked them in MSIS as having left your district. And every student on this report is still eligible and does not have a newer COE in another district. So these students that we're looking at now, and in the example that I did with Minidoka, there were 61 students that had left district. And this is a fairly big job, but is, I think, going to be extremely valuable. And if everybody does it, you'll be helping each other. So what you're going to do is you're going to look up each student in MSIS and go look at their enrollment tab. So when I was doing this with Minidoka's, I did the first, I don't know, 4 or 5, and they were, they'd left the district. They had not re-enrolled in any other district in Idaho. And so as far as we know, they have left the state, that they're completely accurate. When I got down to about the 6th one, I found a student that was showing as being attending CASHA, but does not have a new COE in CASHA. So in this case, what this report will do is it will allow Jamie or Norma to go in, look up each student, and then say, oh, this student is attending in CASHA. I need to first check and see if the student has actually moved. If the student has not moved and is still in my district, then I would need to, just a sec. I would need to make a note to myself, an enrollment note that says, in MSIS, you can do an enrollment comment. I would make a comment that says student living in Minidoka attending CASHA, perhaps, under my current year data. However, it's very possible that the student has actually moved to CASHA. If you know the student is no longer in your district, then this is the perfect opportunity to help your neighbor and to do a move notice, maybe follow up with a phone call and say, I think this student is attending in your school. This is what I know. This is what services we were providing, so that we make sure that in the new district that they are being recruited. So if you show that the student is in your own district, the trick is to remove the left district and date. What happens is when we upload information to M6, where they're going to be taking all of our funding numbers from in about another year, we don't report those students as actively migrant, even though they are eligible and they are attending a school in Idaho. For the most part, that's because in our reporting, that student is showing as left district. And so we don't think they're here. And so this really causes a problem where we're underreporting our own numbers because a student left the district and returned and we missed it. So using this report will help you to find students who have perhaps left your district and returned and are under the radar, or students who have left your district and gone to another district in Idaho, and it will help you to get that student back into the count of students that Idaho has for our student funding. Summer services and student services, these are just very quick ways to look at all of your students. And there's a lot of information in our last mini training that you can go back to on how to correctly report those. But I would check these reports for completeness, as all services that we report to the Office of Migrant Ed come from MSIS and come from the way that we report those services. So do take the time to check those before the end of the year. Remember, our last date to submit data is in mid-September, so we want to make sure that these are accurate. I would make sure that your regular school services are completely accurate and done by the end of May, and then do the same with your summer services at the end of your summer program. Bad residency verification dates. The bad dates report is one of my favorites because it simply makes it easy to see if the dates that you are providing are going to be enough for that student to count as actively migrant during the year. The residency verification dates are critical, and it is so easy to enter a date that won't work. So this report will show you if you entered a date that is invalid for counting that student. It also tells you why it's invalid. So just to reiterate, I know I've said this probably in other trainings as well, the residency verification date must be after the child is 3, before the child is 22, after the student's qualifying arrival date, before the end of eligibility date, before the student graduates or gets a GED. Those are just the ones that popped into the top of my head. There's 5 dates that control which dates are valid for that student. So this report will tell you if the date that you have is an invalid date that will not work for counting that student for funding purposes, or it will tell you that the student is missing a date. And that is just a quick way to double check without going in and having to look up each and every student one by one. This gives it to you all at once. It is the most useful report. Now, when I was looking at, this happens to be Minidoka, they have hundreds of students. They had 0 bad dates and they had 16 missing residency dates. My guess is, although I didn't check every student, most of those missing dates, she's waiting to check after the child turns 3. You can do that, and that's fine as long as you, like Jamie and Norma in Minidoka, are very good at keeping on top of your data. You can wait and do it after they turn 3, or when you are checking the residency verification dates for the other children in that family, you can gather up all your dates, including for 2-year-olds, put them in for each and every student, and then revisit the preschooler after their 3rd birthday. Make sure they're still in the state and update the date. The bad dates report will give you either thing. It will either tell you you've got a bad date for a 2-year-old that's turning 3 this year, or it will tell you that you have a missing date. But a lot of times we have to reconnect with a family to get that current date that's after their 3rd birthday. The district enrollment movement discrepancy report, that's a mouthful. This is a wonderful report because it helps you to see which students are in your district for your CO, that you hold the COE, and where they're attending. As we've already mentioned in this presentation, where I've already said the student may be living in your district but attending another district. In that case, if they're living in your district, the COE should be with you, and they should not be marked as left district or anything else. So in this case, you would, if the student was still living in your district, you would not need to do any more. But in this case, we have a couple of students that it says that the COE is in Minidoka, but the student is enrolled in CASHA. So by running this report in CASHA, I would see, oh, I have some students at Burley Junior High School that have a COE. I know they were migrant. And in fact, in both of these cases, the student is still eligible. And it gives me the COE number so I can go in and see all the information about the student, but they're in my district. So now it's time for me to check and see if I might be able to qualify them. So this report shows where a student is enrolled versus who holds the current COE. If the student is attending another district, verify that he is not still living in your district. However, if not still living in your district, please do a move notice to the new district so that they get that information. And then when to run this report, I would run this report after each IC upload. And those are in mid-October, November, March, I believe May, and then July after summer school. But really the big ones are probably going to be October, November, and March that will give you that information based on the student's current enrollment, which we get through IC. Migrant counts for funding district detail. This report was added when it turned out that not all of the students were showing appropriately. I think it had to do with when we had to add our summer school dates. And we realized that it's really good to let you have the opportunity to double check your numbers. In the past, everybody did the best they could to get everything accurately into MSIS. And then we would run a report that would give us these numbers, and then we would do allocations. And the problem is, if there was an error in the data that was, systematic, we wouldn't necessarily know that until the allocations were already done. This gives you a chance to check your enrolled, not enrolled, PFS, and summer services. Those are the 4 categories I would really pay attention to. Check your numbers. Not enrolled is out of school youth and preschool, not attending school. Enrolled or any child that's in preschool through 12th grade enrolled in your district. Obviously, PFS and summer services dramatically affect your funding. So do check this report. This is an opportunity for you to check the reasonableness. This was something that I was trained by a database designer many years ago, and I have found it to be one of the most helpful things when working with data quality. Is he said, look at the answers that this report gives you. Are they reasonable? Does this make sense? And if the answer is no, then we need to check what's going on with the software, or what's going on with the way the data was entered. Sometimes you really need to take a step back and look at, is the data that I'm seeing for my district, for my students, is it reasonable? And if the answer is no, then we need to investigate why not. And we should do all of this before we allocate funds. Once funds have been allocated to all districts in Idaho, I can't pull them back. And so if there is an error and we find it after the allocations go in April, at that point, it is too late to change it for you. So please be sure to check these. And I would say check them in March, especially after the March IC upload. It gives you, you can check a lot of things ahead of time, like services and PFS and summer services. Enrolled and not enrolled, you'll probably want to wait until after the IC upload in March. So you'll have a couple of weeks window to do that after your district has uploaded your data. All right, so we are to the end of this presentation. Here are the contact people for our department, myself, Julissa, and Tanya. Please reach out to us with questions anytime. My favorite thing is to talk to people in districts. I love it. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording here, and then I will take some time for answering questions. There we go.